skip things too fast again, which was my fault, which I do admit. And things going on now. So now we'll go back to the robots. This is Painting in the Dark by me, XRYXIX. Now, why do you think you can negotiate in my place? Josh has irritated himself. Did you study business? Have you been running a company for years now? Don't question my decisions. There seems to be a sore point with Josh. You suppose he'll let you make some pretty important decisions already for the company. But after some further thought discussion, he agrees that you will be able to make the next major decision for the company. With a deal in hand, you can now build a robot factory. You meet up with Josh for coffee to discuss the plan. So where do you think we should build this thing? Josh asks. Detroit, Michigan. See a bunch of listings for factories dirt cheap. They probably have a good labor pool for manufacturing. Shenzhen District, China, a common location for a tech company outsourcing with cheap but skilled labor. Silicon Valley will withstand the real estate stickers shock to have access to the most skilled engineers. Alaska, which is offering incentives to businesses willing to relocate to the coast near the newly melted Arctic Sea. Like, I don't really want to have cheap skilled labor. Like, I feel like that would not end up pretty great. But have access to the most skilled engineers. Cause it's like, I want to make sure this works. The factory in Sunnyvale, California is a little bit over the top when it comes to amenities. The stainless steel countertops will fit for a fancy new American restaurant, while the micro kitchens on the factory floor feature built-in espresso makers, refrigerators for the free bottled water you will be expected to provide to employees, and ice cream freezers for dessert treats. The real estate agent dressed in a t-shirt and shorts still keeps talking about how all of this is not quite as good as what they had at his former employer. He points out that there's no space for a dedicated gourmet cafeteria and that there aren't as many parking spots that are electric vehicle ready. You think he's new at this real estate thing, but it's good to know the expectations of the tech workers in the area. The factory floor itself is a reconfigurable sliding block puzzle of 3D printers, laser jet cutters, paint stations, and welding arms. This is a factory where every order might be customized to the individual customer's preference. Josh looks like he's about to have a heart attack, and the real estate agent gives you a quote on the property taxes. No question, this is going to be an amazing factory, but operating in this facility is going to be hella expensive. Yeah, let's maybe look at something else. Jeez. Let's see who's in Detroit, Michigan. You fly to Detroit with Ellie and Josh. You have a long chat with Ellie and Josh, and you should talk about future plans for U.S. robots, as well as in your personal lives. I guess I want a family at some point, Josh says, but definitely not now. We haven't even gone public yet. I don't think I could be there for the family as much as I'd like. I could see myself retiring early if I do well, Ellie says. I don't think I need much money to live on. Of course, it'd be nice to have all of the money that Bill and Melinda Gates have to give to charitable causes, but I don't want to keep putting off giving back to the world. The conversation comes around to the subject of children. Yes, I do want kids at some point, she says thoughtfully. I'm not ready now, but someday. It's something I try not to think about because I don't want to plan my life around them just yet, but I know it will be a time all too soon to really decide. I'd certainly like to have kids myself. I think Artemis is enough of a child for me. I don't really see why people have kids. They seem expensive and time consuming. Compared to that. That'd be pretty hypocritical of me to say, but I will go with I'd certainly like to have kids myself. Ellie smiles. Good. I'm glad we're on the same page. You're glad you can talk to Ellie and Josh about such things. Life's big decisions seem a little less scary when you don't have to face them alone. Dark clouds from the Great Lakes have rolled in over the city, adding forbidding air to the dead bolts of factories that grace the skyline. Driving your rental car into the manufacturing district, you see broken windows, graffiti, and burned and abandoned buildings galore. Okay, I can see why some of these are dirt cheap, Josh says. My god, Ellie says. The first signs of life you see are near the social services center, that seem to have become a de facto hangout for much of this neighborhood. In the parking lot you see a few tents, some old ladies playing bridge on a card table and some guys playing a pickup game of basketball. Josh frowns. Wow, they seem to be doing a lot to improve the place. What do you want them to do? Ellie says. They can't single-handedly start businesses. They probably can't even afford to move. Finally, you arrive at your destination, an old factory, once inhabited by the really big three automaker that spans several blocks. You drive for a while to get around to the barbed wire covering wall before meeting the real estate agent at the locked front gates. You've got a real deal here, she says. This place hardly costs more than my place in Ann Arbor. You know what? I have something that a playlist that would be good to listen to. I like Playing in the Dark. And I'm ending it early. And then play this. But we're gonna go to Moon Lightning. And then we're gonna shuffle this. And I think that'll be good. Good. Listening to myself. Putting it down a little more. 9. Finally, you arrive at your destination, an old factory once inhabited by a big three automaker that spans several blocks. We drive for a while to get around to the barbed wire covered wall before meeting the real estate agent at the loft front gates. You got a real deal here, she says. This place hardly costs more than my place in Ann Arbor. Inside, the factory is surprisingly modern and intact, not just the assembly lines, but the robot arms that assemble the cars. The giant welding machines and the crucibles where molten steel is shaped into parts. Some enterprising thieves appear to have made off with the easily transported parts. You see places where computer monitors clearly used to be, but much of this was apparently too expensive to move, too old and specialized to auction. But you can find uses for this stuff. It would do nicely aside from the depressing neighborhood. You could easily imagine robots rolling off the assembling lines. Plus wealth, so should I let your community know you'll be hiring soon? Your guide asked meaningfully, taking away the contract. We got this right. Josh whispers, you're going to make robot workers? You suggested to Josh before that your robots could probably be entirely force, but after having seen the facilities, you certainly might reconsider. What kind of labor would you recommend to Josh? Artemis's model of robot reform at all over, including supervision, robots with human supervisors, human labor at market rates, rather low in this economy. Following Henry Ford's model, I will hire human workers and pay them handsomely. robots or human supervisors or hire human workers or pay for handsome labor. I mean, since it's pretty solid, they seem to run it. But if you do robots or human supervisors, maybe you can get local workers, as you say, mostly supervisory roles. A factory like this still needs a large number of workers, even with automation. Your guide tries to correct you. I disagree, you say, and your guide leaves dissatisfied. Plus, well, if your factory requires a fair amount of work to make it suitable for US robots, and you find yourself needing to come in daily to examine the wiring issues, fix small problems in the design of the machinery, and get things ready to pass inspection, you find it necessary to rent a place in Detroit, and you stay there most nights. Josh is a huge help in all of this, as he's done this before, and before with a space in Palo Alto. Now that you know what he was spending all of his time on while you were in graduate school, you find yourself growing closer to Josh as you talk about issues of getting the facility ready. Ellie is a huge help with the mechanical and electrical work, and she also displays a keen sense of how people will use the place. She points out places where human queues in the lunchroom or crossing cause chaos, places where humans fixing the robots on the assembly line might be in danger, and places where the lighting would be too dark for supervisors to notice mistakes in the product. You think your robots will be more reliable as a result of their insights, plus Christ. What will your factory look like from the distance? With the Sydney Opera House full of organic frozen glass, a geodesic dome will conceal a powerful dish antenna absorbing the world's information from our robots. A plain old factory, nothing much to look at, but it's cheap and gets the job done. You know what? An opera house is so cool. Organic frozen glass. A geodesic dome will conceal a powerful dish antenna. I feel like that's dangerous. The other one's pretty. Let's go with the pretty one. Yeah, virtually adventurous architecture comes at a price, and you find yourself fixing leaks all the time for months, but as well. But you think the designs will attract employees who care about aesthetics and design, and that is the kind of talent you want to attract. Disgrace. Ellie approves and says that the nice setting will hopefully do better work. Disgrace. While your factory is being constructed, she'll personally review all the applications for technical positions. You notice that Tammy, the somewhat unstable person who emailed you after that mock article came out, has submitted a resume. Although her resume seems to have all the right technical buzzwords for making robots under the skills section, there are no activities at all that submitted for the last several pieces of equipment. All federal labs or contractors, perhaps explain the clearance TSSCI in bold at the top of the page, which according to the internet stands for top secret, secure compartmented information. Will you hire her? I'll give her an interview to see if she has the technical chops. No, that would be awkward. I don't know, that was weird. But she was, and honestly, me personally, I wouldn't go with somebody like, you know, like take a picture or whatever. Just, you pass on the resume, something about Tammy just doesn't sit well with you. Soon you have hired a handful of full-time technical employees from the area, and they help with the setup of the factory. They seem somewhat displeased to be working for you, though you're not sure which of your previous decisions is at fault. You keep a skeleton crew at first, because you expect to use your own robots as labor and bootstrap. As a result, getting the production of your first robot takes somewhat longer than you expected, as well. But Artemis is your prototype, and gives you a fair idea of how your robot labor would go. You find V is reasonably skilled at moving around the factory floor and manipulating tools. V is genuinely an obedient worker, and rare aid leads to the factory being able to open a little ahead of schedule. Plus, wealth. Finally, months after you've moved in, you are ready to pull the switch that starts the factory in motion. As your workers, Ellie, Josh, Artemis, and various invited members of the press look on. Raw metal lumps start to weigh down a conveyor belt, while water jet cutters slice the metal at precise angles to reveal a human-like head. Another machine drills 2 large holes for the robot's cameras. The next machine pushes the hollow robot head into its side, and a robot arm delicately places the encrypted hard drive inside. Small drills then assault the head from all sides, and the delicate facial models are attached near the eyes and the corners of the mouth. 4 paint stations then apply the human features, one color layer at a time: cyan, magenta, yellow, and finally black. A long line of metal wings rolls in from another part of the factory, meeting a conveyor belt of humanoid hands. A 4th conveyor belt resupplies the panels of artificial skin for Ellie's redesigned exterior, each set arranged in humanoid form like a strange exoskeleton. The 4 tributary supports meet in the center of the factory. The humanoid robot workers perform the complex task of assembling the parts into the final robots. This final assembly line requires a great deal of careful manipulation of each part and adjustment to each robot's part subtle differences. This is the part that would be done by human labor for another factory. But here, your human employees only supervise the process, watching for any robot malfunctions that would stop the line. For this particular run, they call a halt after the first robot rolls off the line so that she can celebrate. Ellie's humanoid redesign looks beautiful. The staff cheers. Josh lets out a woo. Ellie hugs you. I have brothers and sisters, Artemis exclaims. How do you feel about your first shipment of units? I yearn to see my creation spread to the corners of the world. I have a strange feeling about this. Is this a good thing I've done? Finally, I'm seeing success. The world shall remember the name of Apollo Hayes. God, I hope we don't go bankrupt. I finally got that yearn to see my creation spread to the corners of the world. It is interesting. Seeing the assembly line is a dream come true. Every robot you send out into the world brings you joy, you admit. There may be some code in these robots that isn't strictly necessary for their jobs, but you'd hate to deny these creatures the full richness of life, plus autonomy. You start up the line again and more robots begin to roll off this final assembly line. By the end of the day, you were standing in your large warehouse with over 200 robots, 256 to be precise, lined in a square formation, 16 on a side, ready to be activated. Your audience from early in the day is gathered as well. We have production issues from lines. Finance' initial statement of the line and adapt to the client's needs was an effort on the client's part. Copies of Agnes's mind as of today. They will be a little confused at first when they realize that feelings are not used to it. These robots don't really need sentience. I wrote a more traditional program that did the job. No. Only go with Agnes's initial statement, but learn and adapt to the client's needs was an effort on the client's part. I feel like that's how. Yeah, so you hit a big red button on your phone that says go. Sending a wireless signal to power on the robots. Robots all have the same programming, so when they look around curiously, they all look left in unison, and then the robots look right, but some take a little longer than others. What unfolds is like a curious optical illusion where order is gradually displaced with disorder. Tiny differences in robots' input result in the behavior that diverges, until every robot in square is doing something different. Some say hello to each other, others become interested in their own humanoid hands, and so on. One robot starts to cry, another moves to console it. The robots instantly to keep their distance from each other, resulting in tiny movements from one robot and another goes down the line. You send the kings to kill someone via wireless, and the robots bow down. The audience seems to be at a loss for words. The workers begin to mutter among themselves who sound worried by the robot's chaotic behavior. Have we done any reliability testing on these things? Josh asked. Don't worry, you're like kids, you say. Very reverse to variation inherited. Josh has not seen Josh worry. I bet the client didn't realize they were going to start a family, Ellie says amused. My brothers and sisters seem to be a little rambunctious, Artemis says. Now they are, you say. They need to be non-optimally adapted. You're still learning, but more slowly, because you've already decided what you'll be like. They're still blank slates, waiting to be shown how to be. Artemis nods. I sure hope you know what you're doing, Josh says. takes months to train your robot workforce, since they must be educated from scratch, just as Artemis was. You've forgotten how much personal attention that training process required. You had done it instinctually out of love, but your human workforce starts to complain that it's too much robot child through the handle. You end up needing to hire extra technical staff who are genuinely surprised to learn that their true responsibilities are negative wealth. Your human staff tries to ease their own work by telling the robots that they are built to serve. Let humans and their masters be naive newborns who robots believe them. Negative, but autonomy, plus empathy, plus military. After a few months, your first shipment to Galan Medical is ready. Your robots are extremely successful in the medical world as they combine the dexterity required for delicate surgery with a friendly rapport with patients. Many hospitals soon prioritize your robots over larger equipment, such as magnetic resonance imaging machines, which are only diagnostic. Sales are excellent, plus wealth. You find that with US robots doing well, you have a little spare time again. What would you like to do with it? Expand the business to get another big client who won the option presented earlier. Spend more time with others. Spend more time with others. Last time, I texted her, earlier, she said no. I'm like, this woman sounds honest. I mean, probably. Maybe she wants to know. Despite your wanting to end from work to clear the Artemis, it seems Artemis is mostly curious now for what you do all day. Dang. So you work for Josh and the robots also work for Josh. I suppose so you say, but you get paid and the robots don't. Artemis says, why is that? Robots don't have to be paid because they're not people. You see, under the law, they're objects like your own. Autonomous appears uncomfortable. Do you see me as your property? Technically, yes, but I prefer to think of you as a friend. I actually think of you more as a dependent. The law doesn't see it that way. Yes, you may be kind to me, but don't forget that you're not human. I'm gonna go with that. I actually think of you more as a dependent. The law doesn't see it that way. Independent, like a child. I must ask, very much so you say. Honest appears moved by the statement. You probably also delayed very acceptance and responsibility. Plus empathy. Negative, on and on. One day, while driving into work at the factory, you find that a crowd of human protesters has amassed society at the factory of picket signs. Some of the signs read, robots are people too, and slavery is illegal. The protesters appeared to be mostly college-aged, dressed in t-shirts and jeans, and you absolutely wonder when 20-year-olds started looking so young. From the top of a crate, a burly man shouts, what do we want? Robot rights. The protesters yell, when do we want them? Now. As you get out of your car, the protesters turn their attention to you. Hey, Nagasaki, thanks for coming back. So basically a lot has happened. We sold like robots for like millions or whatever, and I was trying to have it more affordable, but the guy who he did rank to be like, okay, let's raise the price, and then I was like, don't do that again. And he allowed me to have more major decisions in the company. And then I made it so the robots are more anatomist, whereas like you had to teach them from the beginning to really know specifically what they need or want, because I didn't want to like have them be like, you know, just like automatic robots or something. Yeah, you'll see it in detail when you do the playback, but just as a thing of that. And then like after we created all of this, like we had the factory for people to create stuff and all of that. People are now protesting and talking about they want robot rights for the robots who are not, you know, because they're not slaves, they're still sentient beings. They turn their attention to me, find armaments, and get Rem to speak to the protesters for you. Attempt to convince the pickers that robots do not deserve the same rights as humans. Tell robots to chase these people away. I guess the best option for this would be to get Artemis to get Rem to speak to them, because I don't want to think it was. Yeah, absolutely. A few minutes later, you emerge from the factory with Artemis in tow. Please stop, Artemis says, waving we're human. Noid hands, this is my home. We're here to fight for you, one protester shouts. Right, another shouts, but I like it here. Artemis says, I love Apollo. Stockholm Syndrome, one protester shouts, but the rest of the protesters aren't so sure, and the protest loses its momentum. Eventually, they go their separate ways and don't return. Now that you've worked the kinks of how to deal with intelligent robot labor, you could probably license your technology to other companies so that they could produce similar robots while paying you hefty royalties. Would you like to do that? Sure, I sell the technology to anyone who wants it. I prefer to sell only to American companies to give them a competitive advantage. I prefer to sell only to foreign companies so as not to compete with American workers. No, I'd prefer to keep my robots a trade secret. What do you think? Would you keep this thing a secret? Or would you share it with people? Because I feel like if I'm gonna like, yeah, look how people are. I'll go with no, prefer to keep my robots a trade secret. You decide not to license your robot technology. Other companies may not be as careful as you. Yeah, exactly. In choosing how the robots were treated and to what uses they are put, you prefer to retain control for now. US robots seems to be doing fine financially. You begin to think about the things you could purchase with your money. You've been concentrating so much on your robots, you haven't given much thought to what you could do with your money besides expand the business. What will you spend your funds on? You will have the opportunity to buy more than one thing if you can afford it. Wealth 10. I splurge on a flying car. I like to buy a house. I would like to buy myself a nice mansion, cost 4. I like to spend some time with Ellie on a Mediterranean cruise, cost 1. Spend some time with Artemis on a Mediterranean cruise to show Rim the world, cost 1. I like to spend time with Ellie and Artemis on a Mediterranean cruise, cost 2. Yeah, I take them both. You know, I want to give some of my money to charity. I want to make the perfect body for Artemis, cost 3. I prefer to save my personal funds. I'd probably take them both. Buy a house. Or do I need to buy a house? Like, why do I need a house so bad? I mean, of course, you know, a house, you know. I'm like, I don't remember if it'll ask me about that later. I mean, like, yeah, it's just an apartment at the moment. But I'm gonna take him on the cruise first. Negative, negative, well. You spend 2 weeks seeing the sights of the Mediterranean with Ellie and Artemis. You start in Egypt, visiting the pyramids and the Sphinx, impressive reminders of how good engineering survives the test of time. Then you see Istanbul, Athens, and the site of Plato's Old Academy, plus Autonomy, Italy. But why do so many people flock to poorly functional architecture? Yeah. Apollo, the southern coast of France, where you and Ellie almost have a romantic evening until Artemis gets into a fight with the hotel owner of the proper pronunciation of a French word and nearly gets you thrown out. And finally, wait. Oh, sorry, give me one sec. Yeah. Alright. So... finally, Tunisia, where the most important site for you. And Artemis is the site where they filmed the original Star Wars. The trip may have been more romantic if Artemis hadn't come along, but you're glad Leah's had the chance to see more of the world. Artemis's experience with other cultures will help Rome get along better with people from other countries. Plus sympathy, minus military. What will you spend your funds on? You will have the opportunity to buy more than one thing if you can afford it. Wealth 8. So... like, what's the perfect body for Artemis? Like, I'm kind of like, what is it? Like, is it important to me? Should I see what it is? I'm just get a house. Because I don't want to use all of it. Because, well, how about this? We'll buy a house too that's practical. Anyway, well, if you buy yourself a nice house in Detroit, you can easily imagine yourself living there without within a few years. What will you spend your funds on? Now, let's do some to charity. Some, but not enough to hurt my lifestyle significantly. Enough that I'm actually buying a few things that I can make up for a huge amount of wealth. Well, the fact that I'm able to do it. And keep it 0. You realize that you can... oh, man. I find that you could have done a lot more. You donate still enough to save a few lives in a poor country, so it's still worthwhile. What will you spend your funds on? Anyway, just... high carjacking, oh gosh. Okay. I'll save it. Life is uncertain, you never know when you might need some extra funds. You decide to keep your remaining money. A few months later, you're catching up on step vlogs when you see a photograph of your robot. Only it's not your robot. The story is about an upstart Chinese robotics company, funded in part by the Chinese government itself. We believe this company will help us finally make Mao's dream a reality, says party official Xing Guwei. But if robots do all the labor, it will allow China to modernize while at the same time breaking out of the bad cycles of exploitation that occur in the West. How in the world did the Chinese steal your technology? Your own computer security personnel claim there's no evidence of a break-in. When convinced, you hire a consultant to look into the matter. The consultant finds malware and another thing not only in your laptop but in the brains of your robots, including Artemis. The security consultant says there are telltale signs of the malware being Chinese in origin. You can tell, for example, that the person who remotely logged into your machine uses Chinese keyboard layout, given some particular Unicode characters lingering on your server's RAM. But I had all kinds of antivirus running, you say? I took every reasonable precaution. The computer security consultant shakes his head. That stuff's such a scam. It detects the script kiddies that leaves you vulnerable to the real bad guys. You know what happened to McAfee? The guy who started the whole antivirus business fled to Belize eventually to hook up with young women and do drugs. He proceeds to tell you some sordid tale behind the man whose software scans all your computers, but you aren't listening. You take advantage of your computer consultant to educate yourself and your robots on cold exploits and the proper defenses against them, a blind spot in your computer science education, plus autonomy. But for now, the damage is done. Soon you find your prices being undercut and your profits suffer. Negative wealth. A few weeks later, a politician visits you at the factory. One Jacqueline Irons, a representative from Detroit. You vaguely remember hearing that she was once a venture capitalist who rose to fame on the success of the Fox webcast against the man, in which she pilloried unsuspecting guests as examples of privileged elites. There have also been rumors of her running for president soon. You can imagine why in case she tells you in her office, leaning over your desk like many politicians these days. She wears a monocle with a small screen visible only to her, in which she can read messages from her advisors and speechwriters, some of whom avoiding are watching her interactions at all times. You think the medical is probably recording even now. Politicians love to weave moments in which they look good into streaming video commercials. Her hair is cropped short with her fingernails are long and pink, and she wears a broad-shouldered suit. I know how much you've relied on robot labor for your success. You've set a trend that is dangerous for the country. It's people like you who are the reason so much of our country is unemployed right now. What exactly do you want, you ask ardently? It's an essential campaign contribution. We show your heart is in the right place. You're fairly certain she has the power to hurt your business if you anger her. Perhaps you could consider a donation. You have money to spare. So, we make a very substantial campaign donation. Negative. Well, that's 3 negatives. I make a fairly significant one, which is 2 negatives for well. And I make a donation that would be large for an individual, but small for a company, which is just 1 negative. Well, sure, here's $100. I'm afraid I don't have a significant amount of wealth to spare, so if you want my support, pass laws that will keep China from stealing my technology. And honestly, I'm like, if you want my support, pass laws that will keep people from stealing my shit, because it's fucked, you know? Representative Iron seems surprised. Excuse me? You describe in detail how the Chinese stole your robot designs. She seems genuinely angry by the end. We'll pay for this, she says, but the person who has the most power to set international policy is the president. Will you support me? I'm going to make a donation. That would be large for an individual, but small for a company. You agree to make a small donation for Representative Iron's campaign. Thank you, she says. Every little bit counts as well that you tell them money donors. Representative Irons does work for the president, running on platform and winning robots, putting competition, stealing American jobs. This message that hits the American public at just the right time, since unemployment is soaring. No economics tell the corporate that unemployment is a natural and temporary result of new technology to placing all-skilled jobs. It turns out to be a much less effective election year message than raging against the privileged elites and the technocracy, as Representative Iron puts it in his speeches. What are they doing with their money? Who are they giving it to robots, to foreigners, to each other, to anybody but the American people? Well, that's gratitude for you. But then, she dryly sees her enemy's worst. Since she thinks she is ultimately on your side, you're cautiously optimistic when Representative Irons wins the presidency. True to her word, President Irons begins a policy of heavy embargoes against Chinese goods. In retaliation, China cuts off all exports of rare earths and the batteries derived from them. Suddenly, the cost of all the little mineralized electronics people have grown accustomed to, cell phones, laptops, wearable computing, becomes prohibitively expensive. Artemis herself was designed to use cell phone batteries as a cheap, light power source, but now their options have been prohibitively expensive, and Artemis's batteries are starting to wear down. The same problem is affecting all the robots in Josh's company. Your current inventory of robots will be fine, but eventually you'll need to either stop paying exorbitant prices or come up with a new plan. What do you recommend that Josh do? If you invest small amounts of work, I don't have enough for that. Oh, too practical. Dang, I want to do solar energy. Well, I'm so far ahead now, I'm like, never mind. But we're not gonna do the black market. Let's switch to my robots to biodiesel engines. They look much clunkier with biodiesel engines at the cores, and the first substitute models have far too many wires running from the engine to where the cell phone batteries used to be. Robots also now smell like french fries, which can come across as unprofessional, but at least biodiesel is rare and still from cheap, negative cores. You have the feeling that something big will happen soon, but if you don't propose sadly now, you may not have another chance for a while. Weddings are elaborate things after all. Do you propose to Ellie? Yes. No, I don't think now's the right time. I understand now I don't really have time for a relationship after all. Yes. We've been together for so long. After a romantic evening grace, you get down on one knee. Titanium ring with a lab-grown diamond in hand. Ellie says yes. You find that planning a wedding is hard work. It takes about a year of preparation and requires making a slew of choices that you should be thankfully skipping here. Thankfully, Ellie keeps you remain patient during the process and contributes equally to the preparations. Josh is your best man. As you look into Ellie's eyes and say I do, you can tell you that your love is mutual and you're tremendously excited to start a life together. Got married. A few days after your marriage, in the middle of your honeymoon in France, the marriage license office calls. I'm sorry, we seem to be having trouble processing your paperwork, and the woman on the other end says we can't find Ellie on file. Could you have us send us a birth certificate? Ellie duly calls her father since her mother passed away some years ago. When she gets off the phone, she looks stricken. I'm not an American, she says. I was born in mainland China, apparently. Ellie goes on to explain that neither of her parents had become American citizens yet. They had intended to have Ellie in the States to provide her with the best opportunities, but they stayed a little too long in China with their extended family, and she was born in the Shanghai airport. After they successfully stepped back to the States, they never even told Ellie that she was not an American citizen. All the better they thought to keep the secret. When she married, they thought she would become a citizen and everything would be alright. That day will apparently come, but even though Ellie finds it relatively easy, if mortifying, to get a green card, citizenship turns out to be complicated to get. You submit a giant application and wait. Your feeling that something big will happen soon proves correct. President Irons makes demands that China reverses some embargoes on rare earths, or the United States will be forced to contemplate all policy options at its disposal, including military force if necessary. It is in this delicate situation that on April 10th, 2026, the Chinese Prime Minister is assassinated by an unemployed American during a parade in San Francisco. The Prime Minister is replaced by a younger party official who is eager to show that China is unafraid of the United States. China attacks several islands in the South China Sea that has long disputed with its neighbors, and President Irons, unwilling to show weakness, responds with a drone attack on bases in the Chinese mainland. The robot war has begun. And that's the start of Chapter 5, The War Machine. I'll end this and make a new stream for it to be, 5. I'm gonna have a little break, and then, I'll get back to it, okay? Hope you all have good days. Stay, on if you'd like. And then let's summon an electron. And there we go.